Welcome to Quantum Journeys, a podcast where we explore the fascinating intersections of neuroscience, hypnosis, quantum physics, and the metaphysical. In this mind-bending journey, we will delve into the depths of the human mind, exploring the extraordinary abilities that lie dormant within each of us. We'll uncover the hidden connections between our thoughts, our emotions, and our created realities, and discover how to harness these connections to alchemize a life of abundance, joy, and fulfillment. So, welcome to the Quantum Journeys podcast numero uno, where we explore the intersectionality of hypnosis and multidimensional consciousness. I'm Kryssa Marie Bowman, your host and founder of Quantum Journeys Hypnosis Academy, and I'm here with Jonathan Finn. Jonathan, welcome, and I'm so glad that you're here. Jonathan loves learning about hypnosis in general, whether clinical or spiritual, and he did train with Dolores Cannon's QHHT, your level 2 practitioner, yes?
That's right.
Yes, okay. Yeah. You also, I know you trained with Mike Mandel and Carl Smith, and that you're a big fan of the Jacquins and Melissa Tiers. And of course, Quantum Journeys Hypnosis, which is where you first caught my attention. So welcome. And I would love to just dig right in, because one of the things that you had mentioned to me was your interest in exploring and learning more about past lifetimes, other lifetimes, and finding strong synchronicities and activations with present lifetimes. And so do you have maybe a particular case study or client story or something of your own, an experience of your own that you would like to share with us that sort of talks a little bit about that?
Cool. Yeah. Again, first of all, thanks for having me on, Kryssa. It's great to be on. I really appreciate it. Yeah, we've always had a fascination with the past life regression side in particular, as well as all the other kind of out there, the wacky stuff. It's all very interesting. I find the past lives in particular, so much of that stuff bleeds through to the present, as you know. And again, a lot of that stuff, we say past lives, but they're really parallel. Time-wise, there isn't really, we like to think as humans, we think of...
I don't know how much of that we should touch upon, because it's so hard for the 3D brain to understand that, right? So, but yes, I totally get what you're saying. Parallel lifetimes, all times happening now. But, for the purposes of our human listeners and being human ourselves,
absolutely.
Probably just talk about past lifetimes and how they affect present situations. But yes, totally. That's 100%. A whole other podcast for another time, the whole fourth dimensional minus time stuff. Anyway, go ahead.
We'll park it to the side. Yeah.
Even we'll just put that on the shelf.
Even with different past life stuff, how different issues can be kind of traced back to that, how they can bleed through into this lifetime and cause issues. And people try all sorts of different, techniques and modalities and stuff. And it might go for a while, and then it kind of rear its head again. And, you go back, do something else, goes for a while, then comes back and rears its head again.
Right. So this would be a situation where you're helping them with maybe hypnosis or NLP or some sort of change work, and they seemingly resolve the issue that they're coming to see you about, but then it comes back, and then you resolve it again and it comes back. And so that's, for you, is that when you kind of go maybe there's some past life trauma that we need to address?
Yeah. I mean, in most cases, I wouldn't jump and presume that's, this is a past life thing, that's where that stems from. I never presume in any of the work I do.
Good.
I said I'm the guide, so I'm not going to go and presume, I know it's this, based off, other clients I may have had. Everyone's different, and I'll defer to that person's unconscious or their higher self to give the information instead. But in cases, again, where you're doing something maybe more clinical or different modality, and something goes and it kind of comes back, if you kind of ask a little bit more, get a little bit more info, you may find that it actually is stemming through to a past life or some other experience. And again, it's kind of akin to, a weed growing out of the ground, metaphor time. So, a weed growing out of the ground, instead of, you can just chop the weed, chop the stalk or whatever you want to call it, the roots are
Because you
still
don't get the
there.
root. Yeah.
Yeah, the roots are
So
still there. And it's
I'm gonna throw like a little bit of a tailspin into this conversation because, as you know, I do come at this from more of a clinical standpoint as well,
mm,
right?
yeah,
But for people who aren't so sure about past lives or there being other lifetimes or reincarnation or even having an afterlife that, that they're kind of like, you know what, that just doesn't jive with me. Um, and I was one of those people for quite some time, in fact. But
yeah,
here's another way of looking at it. And this is something that, like, when I have a client who spontaneously goes into a past lifetime and it seems to sort of rock them a little bit, like, we don't want them having an existential crisis as a result of actually getting better with,
absolutely.
whatever it is that they came to see us, right? So what I say is that maybe your subconscious mind has just found a method by which you have permission to heal this. And so if the subconscious says, oh, this is something from a past life, it could just be a metaphor that gives the person a permission slip and allows their mind to go ahead and release whatever the thing is because it's past. It's in the past, right? And so because there's no way to quantify for sure whether or not reincarnation exists. I mean, there's lots of people that have had their own empirical experiences, myself included. I've had a couple of near-death experiences, but since there's no way to quantify it, maybe not. But the point of this conversation isn't about proving it. It's about what happens when you have a client that does go into this other lifetime. They find, maybe say, the source of whatever the issue or the discomfort is, and they address it. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, there's lots of different cases. I mean, off the top of my head, phobias, for example, some different ones. I found a common thing seems to be with water. Just there are some other ones as well, usually to do with fire, but water is a big one as well.
As far as like the dying as a result of something that has to do with water?
Yeah, so
okay.
Death, again, from going back to the past life, it's kind of how they died in that lifetime. And
so how might that present itself in the current life?
Yeah, so one example is I was working with a woman who had a fear of waves. So again, not something, you'd water was fine, like, water in a tap, water in a bath, whatever, but just waves. So, she'd see maybe a picture of a wave or see a video of a wave and triggered a real strong kind of response. And she found that a bit strange. She was like, I'm fine with running water, fine with everything else, but waves were a pretty big thing.
Yeah.
And she actually did come in for a past life regression session. That's just that was what she just happened to book in for.
Right. So, which isn't always the case, right? Sometimes people are just like, I don't know what the issue is. Let's just go find whatever we need. But in her case, she intuitively felt like it had something to do with a past life. Okay.
Yeah, she just happened to. That wasn't actually the main reason. She came in for something else, and as part of intake, I generally, as part of intake, I ask, do you have any fears or phobias? Just I tend to ask that anyways, just to know for different inductions, stuff like that. So that just happened to be there, but that wasn't why she came for the session. So we ended up, obviously, that came up too. But went back to past life, what came forward, what her unconscious provided to her from Atlantean times, and obviously what happened there. So
talk about that. What do you mean what happened there? What happened in the
so with the, again, some people may
at least
not
according
know
to
Atlantis.
her.
Yeah, according to her, yes.
And
absolutely.
maybe other clients, right.
Yeah. So again, Atlantis was a long lost city. People may have probably heard about it, but basically what happened there was it was destroyed. Or again, that's what she brought forth during the session, that it was destroyed, and she was there. She was one of the many people that got caught up, obviously, when that was destroyed. But there's a huge wave coming in, and it just kind of went bing. Okay, I get it now.
Okay, so she immediately got the connection. Okay.
Yeah, she got that connection, and from there forth, the wave
So she didn't have to
phobia
do
was gone.
anything. She didn't have to do anything other than just acknowledge that that was where it came from, and it just released automatically. There was no, because I know in my own work sometimes acknowledging where it comes from, just poof, it's gone. And other times you have to do more work. But in her
Yeah,
case, it sounds like,
yeah, that was pretty much the chunk of it. As you said, in some other
wow,
cases, just knowing the why doesn't always mean something
right,
collapses. Um, that
exactly.
in fact that's more often the case than not. It's good to know the why, but you still need to do extra stuff. Um,
I'm a
but
huge fan of that. Yeah. I think sometimes digging into the why and only digging into the why
mm,
can have almost a boomerang effect,
yeah,
because like what happens if you know the why, but you still haven't resolved the issue? And then you think, wow, I must be even more broken than I thought because I already know why I'm doing this, but yet here it still is. But in this woman's case, it sounds
absolutely,
like
yeah,
all she needed to do was just acknowledge it. And then, and I've had that happen too, but that's pretty cool when it does. Yeah.
yeah. That was like 90% of it. She was like, oh, just kind of got that realization as well. I asked a couple more questions, afterwards. Once she left that lifetime, just connect with her unconscious, her higher self. Just ask some more questions there, but
Mm-hmm,
she
mm-hmm.
she pretty much got it. And from there forward, it's like, I can watch the waves. I actually enjoy it now. She can go to the beach.
Beautiful.
She can see the waves coming in and enjoy it rather than get freaked out and run back to the car. So
And so let's talk a little bit about like from sort of more clinical side, what happened there was she acknowledged that there was this um, traumatic experience that was in the past life in this case, right? And maybe that's a metaphor, maybe not.
yeah,
But by acknowledging that and bringing it forward into her current consciousness, she was able to integrate the knowledge that this is back there, this is not right here. And so what's interesting is that so we're talking about things that seem to be more in a metaphysical realm. But if you look at within the realm of neuroscience, what you're doing is taking this situation that feels like it's front and center, right?
yeah,
And you're moving it to the hippocampus so that it knows that it's actually in the
yeah,
past. So it works on
yeah.
multiple levels.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And the higher consciousness, I don't know exactly where that, I do know that I talk to it a lot, mine and other people's. I don't know. I feel like it's more like the cloud, right? Like we
Yeah,
have access to the cloud.
yeah.
And so
Just you
maybe
can
the
tap into that.
hippocampus is just like the method by which we get there. Um, but yeah, so she found integration and then she was
Absolutely.
able to enjoy waves again.
Yeah,
What a
pretty
beautiful
much. And
thing.
I'm glad you mentioned that too as well, the kind of the clinical aspect of it, the neuroscience, because that is obviously that's there too, the reintegration.
Right.
You can even
I
look at
think
it
it's
from
important for people to
ego
realize
state
that it's
lens too.
not just right. It's not just a metaphysical woo-woo thing. Like there's,
Yeah,
it integrates, it traverses several different
mm, absolutely.
levels.
Changes happen in the brain. Yeah,
I've had a couple clients that also had past life Atlantean memories. And so that
nice,
gets into
nice.
territory of where you have multiple people who don't know each other, who have similar past life memories.
Mm,
Right. So that does seem to suggest that there's more to it than it just being a permission slip, a metaphorical. But we'll leave that over here, let people decide for themselves.
yeah.
But in one case, there was a client who remembered being a soldier working for the government, the Atlantean government,
Oh wow.
knowing
Okay.
that the destruction was about to happen, being fully aware of that, almost participating and bringing it about, but kind of had last minute reservations and decided to join the revolutionaries instead. And they all
Okay.
died, of course, physically died anyway,
Yeah.
right? As Atlantis sank. Um,
Yeah.
but this particular client went through multiple lifetimes with a lot of guilt and shame. And once once they had this past life memory, and then we had to do a little bit more work because this had been lifetime after lifetime of sort of digging it in deeper with the guilt and the shame.
Yeah.
So we did have to do a little bit more work, but identifying what was going on and then asking the highest consciousness to help release the trauma at the subconscious level really seemed to do the trick. She walked out of that session almost a whole new person. Like when she came in, she was just kind of hunched over, lots of guilt, lots of shame, some depression, all kinds of, feeling unworthy. And the guilt was interesting because she wasn't old enough to have that level. Like I felt like, wow, you're carrying around like the guilt of somebody who's lived this whole long lifetime of, oppressing others. And yet you're pretty young. She's in her 20s. So yeah. But isn't that interesting that we've had clients with similar
Absolutely. Yeah.
How about you?
Tends to crop up. Atlantean ones or just in general?
Atlantean first, and then if anything you want to talk about comes up, feel free.
Yeah, so I think I did have Atlantean ones, and I think Lemurian ones came up as well. But again, that's kind of a little bit different, but kind of similar. But yeah. So Atlantean ones.
Did you find that you had any trauma that was associated with that, and that you were able to release it, or like in my case, I had, and again, it could just be metaphorical, but I had a past life memory where I was kind of doing what I do now, but in Lemuria. Wow. Yeah.
Nice.
I was using trance states to help people. And actually I had other people who had, it's kind of a long, interesting, sordid story that's going to be in the book that I'm going to put out sometime this year. But anyway, I had other clients who had memories of me being there before I had a past life regression memory of myself there. But anyway, so apparently I was this priestess, and I was helping people with trance work to go into a state of trance when they went into a cave for 3 days as part of some sort of experience through whatever spiritual practices that we had at the time, which I'm still unsure about. But anyway, and so that was pretty cool to have that. Yeah. But what I discovered, and this was how I discovered it, I was like, well, there doesn't seem to be any real trauma here to release, but it would be pretty cool to bring forth some of those skills, because guess what? I'm doing similar work in this lifetime. Yeah, so absolutely. Why not? Right. And so I did. I asked my higher consciousness, can we do that? Is that okay? Like, I know we can release trauma, but can we bring forth like necessary or helpful stuff? And it was like, yeah, good job, Kryssa.
Why not? Yeah.
Figured it out. So
excellent.
Yeah. So I would love to, we could talk about, the past life stuff forever and ever and ever. But I did want to touch upon some other stuff that you had mentioned. You said activations and downloads. From connecting with star family, spirit guides, ancient sites, whether organically or through hypnosis sessions. And I am very curious about this. I have not had any situations like the organic sense where I'm physically there. And so, yeah, just let's open that up and explore it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's another kind of can of worms of stuff. There's so much there as well. I suppose I've had quite a bit of experience with that, both facilitating client sessions, as well as kind of in sessions of my own, different stuff, activations, downloads, like that.
Have you physically been to like an ancient site where you experienced something like that?
Not physically, but within sessions.
Oh, so I see. Okay.
Going in the 4D or whatever you want to call it, or the imagination. It's all good. It's all the same.
Yeah. I mean, who's to say? And just because something is in the imagination doesn't make it not real, because everything is at the level of imagination, really, right? I mean, it is. If you're
absolutely.
This is just for our listeners, but anybody who's ever suffered any amount of anxiety already knows how powerful the imagination is. If you are worried about something happening, and your body is reacting to it as if it's actually happening, and then you realize that's 100% at the level of your imagination. So there you go.
Absolutely. But I think one of the session that stood out was a personal one. Like that, it went to a past life. So past life came up in ancient Egypt. And so there was a site there, kind of inside a pyramid, but it was like it was quite long. It was like a long kind of hallway. And at one point there was like a small tablet there. So like an oblong kind of tablet. And that was interesting. I ended up picking that up, and there was a very strong activation / download from that.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very, very powerful. Pretty intense, but a good intense.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Were you aware of this at a conscious level, like what was being downloaded, or did you just sense that it was that something was being downloaded, something powerful?
The sense, yeah. I wasn't consciously aware of what it was.
Yeah, yeah.
But
and I think that's a really important distinction to make, because there are, when people have these quantum healing sessions, a lot of time what happens is not going to make sense to the conscious analytical mind.
Yep.
And the conscious analytical mind is what, it's so tiny. It's so tiny. And yet, because it's the one that we use to make decisions and perceive life through, it thinks that it's in charge of everything. And so oftentimes, people will be like, well, that didn't make any sense, so therefore I don't think anything happened. And then their life will start to change, and they'll actually start to get better, or they'll have new insights, or they'll be responding to things in a more positive way, or they won't be getting triggered anymore. But they still hold on to the belief that nothing happened because I don't consciously understand it with my tiny little 3D analytical mind, right?
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Yeah, and it's always interesting because I myself will pick up stuff like when I'm meditating or doing self-hypnosis or the gateway experience, things like that. I'll pick up all sorts of things, and I won't know exactly what it is that's been downloaded into me, but I know something has. I feel it, and I get almost giddy because I'm like, I wonder what it's going to be. It's almost like a gift that you peel back a layer at a time each day, And I love that. I just think it's exciting. I do.
Yeah. It's really cool. But that's probably the strongest or the most profound one from a personal session.
Have you ever had ones where the person absorbs symbols into them?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty fun. Often in the Akashic records, it seems to happen, but I've had it happen with clients in other places where I think it's still interacting with the Akashic records, but it's not presenting that way to their imagination. But they'll suddenly have symbols just moving into their hands or coming into their heart, or they'll be breathing them in or swallowing them, or they'll come down through their head, and they'll be like, I don't know what these symbols are. What does this even mean? And I'm like,
who knows? Yeah.
Who knows? But you're receiving, and it's, and how does it feel? Does it feel like it's in your highest good? Yes. Okay. Then continue to proceed. And I haven't ever had anybody say oh no, it doesn't feel good. They're usually just very curious.
Yeah.
What is this? So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Curiosity is so key as well in any hypnotic work.
I'm a huge fan of curiosity for all of life. In fact, I think it is the natural antidote to fear.
Yeah. Great point. Yeah.
So think about it if you're a little kid and you're going up to the diving board for the very first time, you have some fear, but you also have curiosity. The day that you jump off is the day that curiosity wins out.
Yeah. I wonder what it's like to jump off there. I wonder what it's like to hit the water. I wonder what it's all that.
Yeah. And then finally that kills the fear, because you're just so much more curious than you are afraid. And I think that is the case with any unfamiliar thing that we do in life,
Absolutely.
Let yourself become curious about it. I remember when I first started practicing hypnotherapy, and I was so terrified, oh my gosh, what if I'm not going to be good enough? What if I can't help them? What if I don't know enough? What if? And of course, that's all ego. That's all ego based. And it's not that I was walking around with a big inflated ego. It was actually a very tiny wounded ego. It was the opposite problem, but still ego, right?
Yeah.
Once I moved into a place of being curious about what's going to happen in this session. I wonder what this client's going to experience. The curiosity ended up being the thing that got me over it.
Absolutely. And I think, it allows you as well, especially depending on what kind of sessions you're doing, QHHT, for example, there's a lot of just questioning. So being curious lends itself very well to that too.
Yes.
for
Absolutely.
receiving information and helping the client go deeper into whatever experience they're having.
So how long have you been at this? How long have you been doing sort of this more exploratory, metaphysical type hypnosis or change work? We don't even have to say specifically hypnosis, because maybe you have other modalities that you're working with as well.
Yeah, so I find a lot of people tend to go the other way, but I kind of went backwards. So I actually started with the metaphysical, the spiritual hypnosis, then later went back to the clinical hypnosis.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so
very cool, very cool.
I find people tend to start with that and then explore that, but that's just how I ended up doing it.
Well, but so you must have had an interest in the spiritual side from something. So do you mind if we pick your brain a little bit about that? Like what sort of opened you up to that side of life, the more sort of metaphysical or spiritual or woo-woo?
So again, I think it kind of began with some kind of personal development stuff, self-growth stuff, a lot of that, and then kind of moved in then into the spiritual, the metaphysical side, just as, kind of the rabbit hole you go down, you read one book, right, and you're like, find similar people, like, oh, and then you kind of go down that rabbit hole. I think the first book could have been like something like The Secret or something in the kind of metaphysical one. And then
like in the 80s, I think.
Branches out. Yeah, then just kind of branched out from there into some different people, Bruce Lipton, Joe Dispenza, in that kind of, in that field. Then came across, who else? A couple of different people, but Dolores Cannon. That was kind of big one. That was what got me first into, I suppose, change work, you could say. So that was the first modality I studied and trained in.
Exciting. Yeah.
That was in 2020. 2020 I started that, and just kind of went from there really then. Went back, started going through the clinical hypnosis stuff. So trained with...
So how do you feel it's changed your life? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, you've done the work with your clients and you've learned all of these fantastic tools, both sort of woo as well as the clinical. How would you say you've changed since you first started studying all of this?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely changes. As you know yourself, working with people, you can't not change as well. There's, I find, especially with the more, as you'd say, the more exploratory hypnosis, stuff happens in sessions that, again, it really does kind of bleed through. You really pick up stuff, whether you may be aware of it or not. You're still going to learn stuff. You're still going to open your mind in ways that you might have thought very possible. Same with the other work too. So I'd say definitely more.
That you're a different person today because of all of this?
Absolutely.
The studying and the different tools that you've picked up than you were like in, say, 2019?
Absolutely, yeah. It's, the last 3 years, especially 3-4 years, just been. So I'd say pretty different, yeah. Again, just from obviously learning the tools, using them for yourself, doing the self work, which is very important. You have to.
That's actually something that I was talking with somebody about this morning, because we were talking about the self work, and she's like, I have spent so much money on all of the courses in the self work, and I'm like, but are you doing the self work?
Yeah.
Like, you can't just throw money at it and then like expect that like through osmosis you're suddenly going to get all of the changes, right? Like, you have to actually do the things. So like, if it suggests that you start your day off in a certain way, it's not good enough to just pay for the information to do that. You have to do the stuff, right? So it was kind of funny. She was like, from her perspective, she was like, well, I have done it. I paid for it. And how come I still feel bad? And I was like, maybe use the tools. But so like, I this is something I just really want to touch upon, because I found, like, with myself, I've changed so much. Just through doing the self work, and then of course working with clients, because I noticed, and maybe you have something to say about this too, but whatever sort of thing that I'm going through in my own life, emotionally or energetically, I start to attract clients that are like going through similar stuff. And at
Yeah.
first it used to give me such bad imposter syndrome because I was like, I haven't figured this all out. How can I possibly help them? Right. But I would be maybe just like a few steps ahead. And as long as I was a few steps ahead, that I could still help them because like, you know, they're just right there. It's not like I'm way over here. And then it helped me too, because then, you know, we would both be moving forward and I would see their progress and I would see mine. And it would just, you know, just for me, I found that I have a greater sense of inner peace. So like the world around me, there can be chaos in my environment, but it doesn't take me with it all that like it used to. I used to feel like I was on a roller coaster, and now I feel more like a buoy, you know, like the waves can be crashing, but I'm still just right here. Not always, but a lot of the time. So I would love to talk to you about that. You know, how have you found that it's actually changed you?
Yeah, again, that's even everything you said there, you know, about kind of having clients come to you who seem to mirror different stuff that's, you know, going on in your life or that you're experiencing.
So you found that too. It's not just me. Okay.
No,
okay.
no,
Good.
no. I'm sure other people probably find that too. But yeah, I found that right from the beginning, really. And that's kind of what I touched upon earlier, you know, the stuff that you learn through working with other people, whether you're aware or not, you know, that really just all kind of builds up too. So there's that. And then I suppose change as a person, I would say similar as well. Definitely an inner peace, more awareness, not getting sucked into stuff. You know, as people might, you know, watch the news, all this kind of stuff and get sucked into it. I suppose there's more space between that.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. The whole just picking up of other people's stuff, you know.
Yeah.
I don't tend to do that as much. So, you know, I want to talk about a little bit because there is a thing called the reticular activating system that people in our field are familiar with, and also people in neuroscience. And so for the listeners, so the reticular activating system is the part of the mind where whatever it is that you're emotionally focused on, whether good or bad, whether positive or negative, whether beneficial or harmful, whatever you're emotionally focused on, you will find more of it. So this could be likened to the law of attraction in a way. It could also be likened to confirmation bias in a way. But the way that I describe it is, let's say that you're in a terrible mood and you're obligated to go to some holiday party, right? We're right in between Christmas and New Year's. So let's just use this as the metaphor. And you're thinking to yourself, oh, I don't want to go to this party. I've had a long day. Oh, I can't believe I have to do this. I have to show up. I have to. I'm just going to go find a little corner and nobody's going to want to talk to me. Nobody ever likes me. Like, I don't think anybody at this party is even going to want anything to do with me. And so you walk in, you're all sort of sad sack, right? And guess what happens? Nobody wants to talk to you because you're emitting that energy of like, stay away. And then now you have that reticular activating system that is honing in on all of the people that are behaving in exactly the way that you expected, which is like, you know, they don't want to come near you. They're not interested in engaging in conversation. And because you were positive you were going to have a terrible time, now you have a terrible time. Which is also confirmation bias, right? And also law of attraction, because guess what you just attracted to yourself? A crappy party. Okay. So, but if you, same party, just change that mindset around to, I wonder what's going to happen. I'm curious. Maybe I'll meet somebody new. Maybe I'll have a fun conversation. Maybe they'll have my favorite cheese platter. I don't know. I'm usually motivated strongly by cheese. So that's something that will get me to a party. And so you just go there with curiosity and an open mind, and then you're going to find the glimmers instead of the triggers, right? So when we are talking about attracting clients that are going through similar stuff, that's the same thing, except it's happening at an energetic level. So because we now know, and I know there's going to be some listeners that are like, that's just way too woo for me, but whatever, if you've made it through past lives in Atlantis, I think you can stick it out for this. That energetically, we all have that field, an energy field around us that interacts with everything around us, right? And so maybe there's something about that we're going through something. And so therefore it's attracting others to us that are resonating with that same frequency of energy. So I'm derailing the conversation totally because you did touch it. We both talked about like how we'll pick up clients that are going through similar stuff, right? And maybe this is one explanation as to why. And that I guess the main reason I wanted to point that out is because there are people like myself when it first was happening who suffer from imposter syndrome and think, oh my gosh, how can I help somebody when I haven't figured this out myself? But maybe the way that it's designed is so that we do attract people that are coming into our field because we're at that frequency. Okay, yeah. I'm going to get off my soapbox and say, Jonathan, what do you think about all that?
No, brilliant points. I love how you brought up the RAS as well. And again, the power of that too. And, I mean, the similarities there as well. Is it RAS, law of attraction, confirmation bias? It's really all, I suppose,
I feel like they're
models or
just
whatever
different
you want
lenses.
to call it.
Yeah, exactly.
They're just different perspectives, different ways to view it, but it's the end result is the same. As you said, going into a party thinking, oh, this is going to be crap, oh, no one will talk to me, and then sure enough, that's your brain goes, that person's looking at you funny, they don't know,
they're judging me. I knew somebody would judge me, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I know. And it's so funny that we don't actually know what they're thinking, so who's doing the real judging here? Just our own imagination, right? Because we're not psychic. Well, not everybody anyway. Maybe some of us are. But there's something, the law of attraction. This is one of those like sort of controversial, prickly things. Now, my personal belief or feeling, or I hesitate to say belief because every time I think, oh, I believe in this, then something comes and smashes it to smithereens. So I'm going to say, it seems highly likely that the law of attraction is based on what we were just talking about, but it's not just what we want. It's where we're at, like what we're believing about ourselves, what we're expecting. And so if that's the case, that means it's always happening. It's not something that we can like push a button and go activate law of attraction now, right? It's like always happening, whether harmful or not, whether beneficial or not. So that's just my, like what I've sort of concluded. What's your take on, if somebody were to come up to you and say, hey, Jonathan, what's all this law of attraction stuff? What would be your sort of go-to? How would you describe it?
I mean, it's pretty much the same as what you just said there. It's not just, especially if someone comes across it the first time, they might think, oh, this is interesting, I'm going to start using it. No, you already have been. whether you're aware or not, and everything up until that point, you've created, you've attracted, or you've, just put out there unconsciously.
Right. Yeah.
Whether, so again, if shifting it back to the other lens of the RAS, if you're having issues in life, like, oh, this is awful, I hate my job. And then you go around and blah, 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 all this stuff.
You notice all the reasons why you don't like that job each and every day. And you become more and more miserable there because that's what you're focused on. Yeah. And
then it'll probably seep out and spread to other areas of your life too.
Yeah.
Again, as you water that plant, it grows and grows and the roots reach out into other areas. So again, as you mentioned, you always are using it, really, whether you're aware or not. There's no push button that you could just hit and start using it. So, why not use it for good? Why not change your life?
And it has virtually nothing to do with how much you want a thing.
Yeah.
I've noticed that.
And in fact,
I think I could push it away. Are we going to say the same thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if you're like really, really wanting $1,000, oh my God, I really need that $1,000. I want that $1,000. That's coming from a place of desperation and fear and anxiety and scarcity. And so looking at it from the standpoint of reticular activating system, if we're coming from a place of desperation and fear, anxiety, and scarcity, that's what we're going to be noticing and pulling into our lives, because that's what we're noticing. We're afraid, oh my God, what's going to happen if I don't get it? And now we're noticing that out in the world, right?
Yeah, and just amplifying that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is your sort of, do you have a niche? Not everybody does, but do you have a particular niche that you, like when somebody comes up and says, hey, Jonathan, what do you do for a living? What's your response?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say I have a particular niche. As I said, I work with kind of both ends, the clinical and the spiritual hypnosis. And so I just mentioned really I do both. So I know a lot of people do specialize and they'll only do one or the other. For me personally, I think, it depends on, I really just find it depends on the issue, that the person comes to you for. And so based
Do you
off
have
that,
any
then,
particular, like, I guess, ideal client, or like who typically finds you? Who do you find yourself helping the most?
yeah, so I find myself helping a lot of anxiety clients
Yeah.
in regards to that sort of stuff. Anxiety, I'd say trauma release, and then also on the kind of more spiritual side that people kind of more so want to explore. So different stuff like that, maybe past life regression or different stuff, they want to connect their higher self, receive answers, different things like that. So they would probably be the main ones. People looking to enhance their spiritual connection as well. That would be kind of the main thing. But again, if someone wants to quit smoking, I'm not going to go into the super spiritual stuff. Well, you could still, but it depends. Different tools for different jobs.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're dealing with
so that's
something
kind of how I
that's
approach
purely
it.
at the level of like habit,
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
subconscious and habit, then you can deal with it at that level. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's kind of how I roll with things, go with issues, and just really use the tools for the job. As I say, if your only tool is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail. So
Right. Exactly. Yes.
So yeah, I think flexibility, and just dealing with the person in front of you.
And do you do most of your sessions online or in person, or do you kind of do both?
Yeah, so online, pretty much online.
Okay.
Right through, yeah. And I think it's peaked such a huge amount since 2020 as well. But so predominantly online.
And so what's a typical length or duration of a session for you? Like, let's say you have a new client, what can they expect when they step into your virtual office?
So let's step into the virtual office. So usually I have a call with someone first. So before we've worked together, just kind of get a feel, and the first off that I can actually help them, or rather help them help themselves.
Right. Yes.
To resolve their issue or discover whatever they need to discover.
I like that you made that distinction, by the way. Yeah. That you're helping them help themselves. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm always careful to explain that to everyone I work with.
Because there's still like people out there who don't have a whole lot of information about what hypnosis or hypnotherapy is, except for what pop culture has shown them.
Yeah.
Right. And so they're worried that, we're going to make them bark like a dog or cluck like a chicken, or, I don't know, get their bank account password or something. And I'm like, first of all, I'm not going to make you bark like a dog or cluck like a chicken unless that's therapeutic for you.
Yeah.
Yes, maybe it is. Right.
Whatever floats your boat. Yeah.
But if it were a situation of like, being able to like convince you to give me all of your bank account information or something, like, I don't know that I would be living like this. I think I probably would be living in like Monte Carlo or, on somewhere a yacht somewhere. Right. So I think we can probably squash that whole fear that hypnosis is going to like usurp the client's willpower, because that's just not the case.
Not at all. Not at all.
So what do you tell them when they ask about that? What's your response?
Yeah, so I always say, really, that's the biggest thing. A lot of people may have the mindset of, hypnotist does thing, hypnotist creates the hypnosis. No, as it's a loop. So it's not a passive process. So it's an active process between the two of us.
It's like a collaboration. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I always say it's a loop between the two of us. It's 50% here, 50% here. I'll give the 100 of mine, and you can give, you have to give the 100 of yours. It's easy, but I'll show you how. So I can't make you go into hypnosis, but I'll show you how you can do it yourself, and it's going to be easy for you. So really just reinforcing that, and it's the truth. That's really all it is. Just a loop between the two of us. working
And so
together.
why would it work more effectively to help a person make changes using hypnosis rather than just telling them to?
Could you repeat that, please? I'm not sure.
Why would
Not
it
sure I
help a
caught that one.
person? Like, let's say
Yeah,
somebody does want to quit smoking, for example,
yeah,
or biting their nails, or, you know, some sort of little habit, like, you
habitual
know,
thing. Yeah,
doesn't have to be a big esoteric thing. It can be just like something that's just annoying and you
nail
want to
biting or
lose,
something. Yeah,
right,
yeah.
lose weight, whatever. So having just a regular sort of talk therapy session where the therapist says, well, stop doing that and, you know, find something else to soothe yourself with or whatever. Why
Hmm.
do you feel that it would be that it's more effective to help the person while they're in a state of trance using hypnotic methods?
Yeah, great question. I mean, as you know, so many issues, in fact, most, if not all, are, going from that level, the subconscious slash unconscious level, whatever you'd like to term it. And again, you'll find that someone,
Meaning that
whether
it's just
it's
not something that's in the conscious, like tiny little 3D analytical brain that thinks that it runs the whole show, actually doesn't really know why you're doing most of what you're doing.
yeah,
Right?
and if it did, you wouldn't be still doing it.
Exactly.
That's why the person seeks help. And again,
Exactly.
it's not something, a smoker, for example, someone that maybe smokes 20 or 30 cigarettes a day. Before each one, they don't go, I think I'll have a cigarette now, and they put it out. No, they find themselves halfway through one. They're, oh, it's just autopilot. Same, someone biting their nails. They might be
Hmm.
staring off into space, biting their nails, and then they realize, oh, I'm biting my nails. They
Right.
didn't think, now I'm going to bite my nails. So it's unconscious.
Yeah. The
It's something you
motivations are
don't think
coming
of.
from
You just
else.
do. Yeah.
Right.
So again, the key
And
thing
so
there
working with
is
people at that level, you're like getting
mm,
right to where it lives. Right.
100%,
Yeah.
100%, and
Yeah.
making the changes there, because if it's stemming from there, you can talk to the conscious mind all day and say, well, try this instead, try making little carrot sticks and nibble on them instead. Like
Right.
you're not really, it's just kind of little kind of coping strategies here and there,
Or
but it's
like
not
that old
long
Bob
term.
Newhart episode. Did you ever see that old Bob Newhart episode where he's a psychologist and he has a woman in his office and she has all these issues and he's just like, well, stop it.
Just stop. Yeah.
That's his approach. Just well,
Yeah.
stop it. Just stop it.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
But
So
it
if
is, yeah,
that worked, then
then
well,
everyone
you
will,
wouldn't have
yeah.
a job.
No, no, people wouldn't come to. Um, and sometimes it is the case, people kind of, depending on the issue, they're like, oh, this is my last resort. I'll go to a hypnotist or a hypnotherapist, which
I
is kind of
find that's often
unfortunate,
the case. Yeah.
because, there are some other great modalities out there for sure, but, some of them tend to be slower, um, maybe not as fast acting, and some people can regress too with the issues.
I
They might get a
learned
little
that the
relief
hard
and
way.
regress. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's unfortunate, and oftentimes you have people. I know I've had people that have been through different stuff for years. Maybe went to counselling or different stuff. And again,
Hmm.
that's perfect. It has its place. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
And then we do forever 2, 3 sessions or whatever, and they're like, God, why didn't I? Why didn't I do this first? Again, everything has its place.
Well, so
You
I
know,
kind of look at it like I was in traditional talk therapy. I had agoraphobia, actually. And so obviously anxiety, because that's a given when you have agoraphobia. And it was really, really helpful to have somebody to validate my experience. And so I found that going to traditional talk therapy and having somebody say, like, yes, I absolutely validate what you're going through. You are not crazy. This is something that a lot of people struggle with. Here's, my information about it and whatever. And then just letting me talk about it because I didn't have anybody I could talk to about it.
yeah.
And luckily I found somebody who was willing to come to my home because I was agoraphobic, so I couldn't really leave very easily, right? But after a while, talking about it was no longer helpful. So at first it was because it was validating and I was finally able to I can talk about it, like instead of just keeping it all bottled up into myself. But after a while, I would say after, a few months, talking about it was kind of digging it in a little bit deeper. It was making it a little stickier. Like I would be having a perfectly fine day and then I'd be like, oh, I have to go to therapy. I better figure out what we want to work on. What's wrong with me today?
Yeah.
Instead of just having a good day, now I'm like, well, I better dig up some problem to have, right? So then I'm like ruining a perfectly good day just so I can have a therapy session. And I did EMDR and I did all kinds of stuff on it, lots of different modalities. But it was hypnotherapy that helped the most, and within 3 sessions. So yeah, it just dug right in, rewired those neural pathways, helped me like reframe my perception. And that's in fact why I dusted off my old, academic background in psychology and said, let's go do something with this. So yeah. And this isn't about me. Sorry, I just wanted to share why.
No, that's
that's
brilliant. Brilliant to know, and thanks for sharing that. It's that's a perfect example.
How about you? Have you had anything that was specifically like helped by hypnosis?
Yeah, so different stuff like that too. Issues with anxiety before. Found hypnosis definitely big change with that. Good. Just kind of goes again, as you mentioned, just right to the root. You're not kind of, and especially you were saying kind of talking about the issues. At first it's great, particularly if it's kind of been something you've been holding on to, and now you can share it with someone. You can be validated. You can have your feelings. You're validated. All of that, but after a while, it's again those neural pathways chisel, going deeper. Then you're re-anchoring that every week. As I said, you could be having a great day, and then all of a sudden, oh yeah, I've my therapy session. Oh, what should I? Yeah, and you go back into that mode, and it's just hammering it deeper.
And so even just the whole concept of like having to feeling obligated to talk about what's wrong. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Which keeps you focused on there being something wrong, which kind of trains your mind to look for things to fix, which makes you feel even more broken.
Back to the RAS, to the RAS there. You're just retuning that, recalibrating that every week or every 2 weeks or however often, So I think at a certain point it's going to shift from that, from the why, the dig in, the search in, to the how.
Yes.
How will you break free of this? How will you resolve this? How will you start living a happier, healthier life? Absolutely. Whatever it is, whatever your goal is.
And isn't it so interesting that like, I don't know about you, but for me, and I would say most of my clients, if not all, the natural human inclination is to go, why? Yeah. And I mean, I find myself doing it even now, even though I have this vast toolbox, I'll have some sort of like behavior that I'll just look back and go like, why did I do that? What's up with it? Like, why am I, instead of like, wait a minute, hold on. It doesn't even matter. Like maybe it doesn't, chances are probably not, especially if it's just a minor thing, but like, instead of figuring out why, just how to move through it, how to, I love that you made that distinction. So I see that you have a YouTube channel, and I wanted to ask you about that. What would we find if we went onto your YouTube channel? And what is the name of your channel so people can look you up? Yeah,
so the name of my YouTube channel is Jonathan Finn Hypnosis.
Finn spelled with 2 N's, right?
2 N's, yeah.
Okay, John, and I'll make sure that we put all of that information at the in the podcast episode so people can find it. But so what would we find there?
Yeah, so again, that's a work in progress, but recently started uploading just some session clips, session segments from different sessions. So there's some QHHT ones in there, some QHHT ones, different just kind of tips and tricks as well. So beautiful. Different things, how to break out of a negative emotional state.
Why don't you give us one? Let's have one. What's one of your tips or tricks that you give? What's one of the ones that you give regularly?
One of the most regular ones I give would probably be, you'd be familiar with the reverse spin or the backward spin, whatever you want to call it.
Pretend like I'm not, because our audience might not be.
Yeah, so that's a great one. Again, there's some even simpler ones, but I like that one. It's pretty good. You can do it anywhere, anytime. You don't have to do the hand movements. You can imagine it. Mm-hmm. So basically all that entails is if there's something you're feeling, say you have to go to the shop, the supermarket, and you're feeling anxiety about that. first you want to take notice, okay, where am I feeling that in my body? Just say, for example, it's in the chest. Okay, I'm feeling that in my chest. And just ask yourself, just notice, what direction is that spinning in? What direction is that moving in? Is it swinging clockwise, counterclockwise? Take note of that. And then when you've taken note of that, imagine you can pull that out from your chest and just place it in front of you. And it's still spinning in that same direction. Then what you want to do is imagine that you can grab it, spin it in the opposite direction. Spin it up faster and faster and faster and faster. Spin it in that opposite direction. Then when you've done that, imagine you grab it, pull it back in to where it was before, and notice how it's changed. And that's pretty much it. It's quite quick to use. And normally when I show that to people, I kind of say first, you can use this anywhere, any place, anytime. And I do work a lot with anxiety clients. And almost as I'm showing, I can see they have the question already in their mind. And I'll say it after, but the question is always, you said I can use this anywhere, anytime. But if I'm in a restaurant, if I'm in a supermarket, I'm not going to do this in front of me. People think I'm crazy. Most people have that question. Say, you don't actually have to do the hand movements. You can just imagine.
You don't have to pull it out of your chest. You can just imagine that. Yeah.
Yeah. Just imagine it drifting out, floating in front of you. Then imagine spinning it up. You can even use your eyes going like this if you want. But depending on who's around, that might be too. So again, just let it.
Or just kind of close your eyes, even.
Just imagine it. Yeah. Or even just close your eyes. Only takes a moment, and then allow that to drift back in to your chest or wherever it is in your body that you are feeling that motion that you want to change. That's all it is, really. That's
a beautiful one. That's a good, nice little NLP, neuro-linguistic programming tool. Yeah. Have you ever encountered anybody who said that it's not spinning at all, like it's stuck?
Yeah, but for pretty rare. What I do in that case then is, I just switch. Okay, well, what color? What color do you imagine it to be? And that always does the trick. Then it's like,
as long as you get some sort of movement, at the level of imagination. Yes, exactly.
And usually I found, again, it's pretty rare that no one gets a spinning. But if I ask, okay, what color do you find? What color does it feel like, or what do you imagine it may be? Like, it's like a heavy kind of black, just for example. Like, okay, and do you feel as if that's moving in any way? Yeah, actually, it is. It's kind of moving really, really, really slowly. Like, okay,
and then bringing in maybe another lighter color or something that feels lighter.
Pull that out, change that. What color do you want instead? Yellow, like the sun. Yes. Okay, change that, put it back in. Notice how that's changed. So that's a really easy one to give.
I wasn't asking you to stump you. I was asking you so that anybody who's listening to this, because there might be that one small percentage of, the population who goes like, hey, nothing's moving. And so just to give them another option.
Absolutely. Yeah, anything, use colors, anything like that. I've never had it fail with anyone. If the spin doesn't work, if they feel like, no, it's not moving at all, shift it to a color, and you'll often find then if you focus in on it, it's moving in some way, or it may even be, vibrating, just kind of buzzing a little bit. That's fine too. You can take that, change that, or just change the color. Take it out, change the color, pop it back in, and notice what's changed.
Yep, so. Beautiful. Or have it, stretch it out and then shrink it down. Anything you can do to get movement in it, really. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because I think a lot of people don't realize that emotions live in the body. It's not just the brain, right? You might identify it with your mind, but you can find it in your body. And so working with it at that level, instead of digging into why is this there? What's wrong with me? How did this happen? You can just
get the shovel out. Yeah, dig.
Exactly. You can just be like, where am I feeling this? Oh, I'm feeling it here. And what direction is it spinning? Or what color does it? Or how heavy is it? Or what size is it? And just get something moving in it so that you can feel it shift out of you. Yeah.
It's a great game changer. Some people might think a more common approach, someone might just trying to, say for anxiety, for example, they might just trying to talk themselves out of it because that's what they were told to do. I'm safe, I'm this and that. It's good too, it can work, but usually what you'll have too while you're telling yourself, I'm safe, it's only the supermarket, there's no one going to be looking at me, it's fine. But then you have this other voice, no, it's not. No, they're all going to be,
Right.
So you have that other part, and again, it's kind of hard to just squash that. So dealing with the feeling directly shifts that. It shifts your perception. It shifts everything.
And not giving it a narrative. I find that helpful. Actually, my daughter just was talking to me this morning and she was like, I feel like I want to cry, but I don't know why. And I was like, well, then just cry. And she's like, but I don't know why. And I'm like, it doesn't matter why, just cry.
Don't need to, yeah.
You don't have to have a why. And I think also, if we don't know why, but then we go find a why, now we're narrating, now we're like we're creating a problem almost, we're making it into a thing where it didn't necessarily have to be a thing. It was just an emotion that was temporary and needed to move through. But now we're like, no, I'm going to grab it and I'm going to pull it apart, deconstruct it and analyze it, figure out what makes it tick. And I'm going to and now you have a gaping wound instead of just an emotion that needed to flow through you.
Where you could have just let it go. And like the ebbs and flows, you could have just let it go and be done with it.
Right.
Now you have this.
And I laugh as if like that's so easy, but I'm laughing because yes, I struggled with agoraphobia for 13 years. And you would think in those 13 years that somebody would have mentioned to me that you could deal with these emotions somatically at the level of the body, using your mind, but to move it in, out of you somatically. It never came up in 13 years of therapy.
It doesn't seem to come up in many other areas, which is a shame. And I think because of how quick and how effective it actually is, there can be this element of, no, that can't work. That's too good. That's good. Too easy. Yeah, we need to complicate it because how could
I paid for this?
Yeah.
All you gotta do is just be like, well, is it gone? Did it shrink? Do you feel better?
Yeah.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be complicated. The human brain might be very complicated, but I find that the mind itself is quite simplistic in how it moves towards pleasure and wants to avoid pain. And we don't really need to complicate it a whole lot more than that, do we?
No, it learns best quickly.
Yep. And it tends to be a bit literal sometimes, but that can be fun to play with.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. It was a pleasure just having you on this very first Quantum Journeys podcast.
Yeah, wonderful. And thank you again for having me on, Chris. It was brilliant to chat.
And I am going to put all of your social media links and everything in the episode guide, but I would love you to go ahead and just tell people, how can people find you? So if they wanted to schedule a session with you directly.
Yeah, so you could go to my website, which is www.jonathanfinn.ie. Then social medias as well are just Jonathan Finn Hypnosis.
Okay.
So
and
any of those
is for Ireland?
Yeah. So a little bit of a funny one. Yeah.
JonathanFinnHypnosis.ie. Okay. Perfect.
Or JonathanFinn.ie.
Oh, just JonathanFinn.ie.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry
and then
about that.
No, you're all good. And then the socials then are Jonathan Finn Hypnosis. Yeah.
I have a feeling that once people hear your voice and how lyrical and melodic it is and how just soothing it is, you're probably going to get quite an uptick in calls once this gets out there. Now, that's assuming that people are going to listen to this podcast, but I'm going to do my part, and then you show up and do your part. And yes,
both 50% back to that loop.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much. It was quite an honor and a pleasure, and I wish you well. And I'm going to
thank you so much. Many happy returns, Kryssa.
Well, thank you so much, my intrepid travelers. Did that last episode blow your mind? We journeyed deep into the intersection of quantum healing, the science of consciousness, hypnosis, and the metaphysical. And let's just say reality isn't always quite what it seems, is it? But fear not, there is much more to come. This is only just the beginning. Quantum Journeys podcast is your passport to mind-bending adventures where we push the boundaries of what is possible. So stay curious, stay open, and remember the power to change everything lies right there within you. We'll meet again soon on the Quantum Frontier. This is Kryssa Marie Bowman, your Quantum Journeys podcast host.